This is the New Writer Podcast. I'm Matt Brotherton, and each week I detail my journey as a storyteller in hopes it encourages other writers struggling to live their dreams. Show notes and videos can be found at newwriterpodcast.com. And now, here's the show. New Writer Podcast, Episode 30, Taking Time to Find Yourself. Next week will be the 1-year anniversary of this show. I know I should have about 22 more episodes than I do, but I can't change the past. But I can learn from it. Over the last year, I've learned a few things about writing, podcasting, and storytelling. I've learned quite a bit about myself, both as a writer and a person, and I've learned a surprisingly large amount of HTML code. Seriously, you don't even want to know how much time I've spent coding websites. Today, I'm going to talk about some of the biggest lessons I've learned for this year and how I hope to apply those lessons to my life in the future. But first, the weekly update. I've been seriously slacking this week, you guys. It isn't a matter of motivation or dedication either. I've just had some really crappy word count days, and I know why. I've been getting up at the butt crack of early to write every morning, which has kept me floating, but most nights I'm eating dirt after work. I have managed to keep my 750 word streak going, and I'm currently sitting at 45 days without missing. All of that was written in the morning. And I'm not a morning person. I like to stay up late. So what is happening is I'm actually getting to a place where I'm only sleeping like 4 hours a night, and it's not working for me. I know there are writers out there who swear by that sort of thing. I'm not one of them. The actual word count breakdown is even more sad because of the 19,922 words I wrote this week, only 4,901 of them were on fiction, which isn't enough. I am not going to finish the space opera by tomorrow, obviously. I do have, according to my schedule, I have till the end of the month, and I'm going to redouble and reevaluate my schedule and try to get back into a productive habit of making sure my fiction comes first starting next week, and I think I can still make that goal of the 31st. It's only about 4,000 words a day I have to write, and I can do that. I can write as many words per day as I've written this week. Sales have been actually really good. I'm still having a surprisingly good August. I sold 7 more books this week, meaning that I'm still averaging more than 1 book every day, and which of course they don't come in 1 book every day, and I'm never going to make an income off of 1 book every day, but I'll take it for what it's worth. One strange thing that did happen this week, and it had to do with my permanently free book choices, was the downloads kind of just dropped off all of a sudden for the last 2 days. I had 1 download yesterday and none so far today, which I'm recording this at 6 o'clock at night on Friday night. And I'm not sure if Amazon did something to the algorithms or if something else is going on, so I might have to investigate that if I ever get around to being motivated to look into that. I'm not really worried about it. I've had sales drop-offs like that or downloads drop-offs like that in the past, and usually they roll back up after a couple of days, so we'll see. I've also reset my promotional goals. I don't think I'm going to try to push any of my books until I'm where I want to be as a writer, and I'm not there yet, and I'll talk more about that in just a minute as part of today's episode, but for now, I'll give you the numbers for this week. Choices had 0 sales, but it had 28 free downloads. Fallout had 5 sales, netting me $10.30. Summons had 2 sales, $4.12. No sales of Tragedy or Purpose, and as Alcohologist Chronicles finished up its free week for Kindle Select, I got 8 more downloads. I'm actually growing sales numbers, and it's incredibly slow growth and kind of frustrating. Much slower than I would like it to be, but it is growing, and that's all that matters. That continued growth, which is the first lesson I've learned this year. Lesson 1. As long as you're moving forward, you're doing fine. I tend to let anxiety get the better of me. I worry about things that are completely beyond my control or irrational, like being hit by a pea-sized meteor that doesn't give me superpowers. And part of that is it really does have an impact on my writing and my ability to keep moving forward as a writer. I get stuck. And one of the things I get stuck with is like, it's almost similar to paralysis analysis, but it's like craft analysis paralysis. It's like I don't think I write as well as I want to write. So I have a harder time writing, which of course actually makes the writing worse. Like worrying about the fact that the writing's not good enough yet makes me slow down and overthink and criticize my own writing, which makes the writing process harder and makes the writing suffer for it. And I know where what I've been writing is part of the problem, and I need to finish the space opera and move on. I'm not sure I'll ever actually publish it. Actually, it wasn't ever really intended to be published. It was a very specific project for a very specific goal that I've kind of decided to abandon in favor of some other things that more align with who I am as a person and a writer. But part of the problem is I wanted to write a certain type of speculative fiction. I wanted to write urban fantasy. I wanted to write like Star Trek. I wanted to, write these nerdy things that I love and don't think there is enough of in the world, even though there's a lot of all of it. I don't ever think there's going to be enough. But it's not the kind of writer I want to be when I really am honest with myself. Really, I'm not Brandon Sanderson or a Jim Butcher, and I'm never going to be. I love their writing, and I love their stories and the genre and all of those things, and I have enjoyed writing the Seven Keys saga, and I was really excited about the space opera until I realized that space opera is really hard to write if you don't know a lot about science. And ultimately, I am not sure that's who I am as a writer. I'm still trying to find my voice, but I also have to remind myself that I am continuing to move towards that ultimate goal. I am getting fiction done. I am getting nonfiction done. I am getting word counts out there, and I am making book sales. So each of those steps is in the right direction, and that's really pushes me to go, I've done it this far, I can keep going, and I will get better, and I will make my way to where I want to be. So goal 1, to associate with lesson number 1, is to continue to increase my word count and sales every day, because those are things I can track and keep, matrices. They're numbers I can analyze. And so they're numbers I can analyze, and that means I can improve on them and continue to move forward and know if I'm moving forward. And that's a big deal. Lesson 2, writing is work, but a very special kind of work. I love writing. I am actually pretty okay at it. I'm getting better, and I will continue to get better in the future. But writing is hard when you aren't writing to your natural strengths. And one of the lessons I've learned this year is to stop trying to... honestly, I haven't taken this lesson to heart. I know it logically, but I haven't taken it to heart. Which is to stop trying to fight who you are as a writer and stop trying to force yourself into fitting in this little box of conformity of what you think you should be because it's what you like or what you think is good. And instead, focus on who you are as a writer and let your own being pour into that, because that is going to be your best work. It's going to be good. When you lean into your own strengths and your own passions, you are going to write better things. And that is something I am going to have to learn is what I need to do. I need to say, I love these stories, I love these things, but I'm just not the writer who writes these things. And it's one of these situations I have learned with the romance story I was working on. I plotted it. I built these awesome characters. I built these great story beats, and I was really looking forward to writing it, but I'm not that writer. So what I've done is I found someone to collaborate with me who is the romance writer, but had a hard time with plotting and characters, but she is that writer. That's her voice will fit this story way better than mine ever would. And together we will make a piece of art that we want to make, that we are proud of. I have to learn to embrace that in all of my writing and all of the forms of that. And to some extent with this podcast, there are things that I have done with this podcast that I wish I could go back and do differently and will be doing differently in the future, which brings me to lesson number 3. Remember to be a person. When I was blogging regularly, I found that I had 2 types of content that got a significant amount of traffic and comments. And the first type was when I took something that really bothered me and found a way to make it funny, which is what I would love to be doing all the time, but I'm not necessarily as funny as I think I am. And the other type of content that really worked, the blog posts that I wrote that resonated best with my readers and got the most comments and interaction and engagement, was when I was emotionally honest in my writing. And I try to avoid that generally here on this podcast because I've been accused of being a little depressing or a little angsty in the past. And I didn't necessarily want that associated with who I am as a writer. But, and this is a big but, it's always been who I am as a writer. I actually, at one point in my career, thought that I couldn't write if I wasn't depressed, which is stupid in hindsight, but I honestly believed that. I thought I couldn't create art if I wasn't just like mopey as The bottom line is, I need to make sure that I am putting myself and my identity and my passion and who I am into everything I do. That means if I'm working on a project that doesn't feel like me, I need to stop working on that project. I need to say, okay, I need to move on from this, or I need to completely change that project to fit me as a person. And that's a really important thing that a lot of writers will tell you, and a lot of advice that you're going to get is that your passion, your emotion, your voice, your being is the most important part of this. And it will take you forever to bring it to heart and to realize it's true, but it is the single most important thing that you can do for yourself, is to put yourself fully, open chest, open wound, stand naked on the stage out there. Which is my goals number 2 and 3. Goal number 2 is I do need to remind myself that this is a part-time job. It is a job, and I want it to be my full-time job. So I have to treat it like it's a job and make sure I'm doing the work, but also, going to goal 3, I need to be more open and honest about my personal narrative and what my needs are as a writer so that I can do the work without suffering through and just struggling and making crap, so that I can make something worth spending time on. Lesson 4, make a plan to grow your craft, not your income. I have to admit that when I started writing, I thought that if I followed these rules of just publishing and putting stuff out there and building a series with one protagonist and 5 books and all of this stuff and this and that and whatever, I was going to get to a place where I could make a full-time living and then worry about everything else afterwards. I did it completely backwards. Completely. Really what I should have done, I should have sat in my room and worked hard on making sure that what I was writing was me at my best and not worried about following any of the sales rules. Because what I've learned this year is the sales rules aren't really as important as building a true connection with your readers and creating an experience for them that makes them want to push other people towards your work. And because I think I tried to focus on following the rules of my genre and the rules of self-publishing and the rules of this and that, I think I lost my direction of who I was supposed to be, which is why I think, I can look at my series, the Seven Keys Saga, and say, these books are the best because they're the ones I wrote without worrying about making sure I was following I have to get a book out at this time and this series has to be this long and the genre says I have to have this moment now and this is what has to happen. And I should have been doing that from the beginning, which is where goal number 4 for the next year of this show comes in. For the next year, I am going to be dedicated to creating a course for myself to hone my craft, to building my voice as a writer, and to just producing the best quality work I can as quickly as I can that is pure me. Lesson 5. Keep moving forward. There are a lot of things I regret about the first half of this year. I feel like I wasted a lot of time being stuck on the treadmill of just not having the push and the drive and the need to keep myself moving forward. And honestly, I am going to say right now that Patrick Stemp, the host of the To Be Read podcast, is the person who helped me get off the treadmill and back into moving forward. I was stuck. I was not writing or producing or wasn't doing this podcast. I wasn't creating the work I wanted to be creating. I wasn't getting my voice and my vision and my creativity out into the world. I was just floundering, and I got an email one afternoon from Patrick Stemp asking me when I was going to do another podcast. And just with that one email and the idea of, well, hell, now I have to do another podcast, it got me to start working again, because it's not like I could do a podcast and not have written anything all year, or I couldn't do a podcast and be like, sorry guys, I'm going to talk about being a writer, but I'm not writing. So it was like I had to force myself to just take those little steps again, because I had an audience of one person relying on me to get my story out there. And that was really a big, important moment for me, because just starting to move again made me feel like I was making progress. Sure, I'm still writing slow, and I'm not getting as many words done as I want to be getting done. The list of projects that I want to write in my life just keeps getting bigger, and I'm not making headway nearly as quickly as I'd like to be. This podcast isn't as much as I would like it to be yet, and all of these things are just, I'm getting there. I'm moving forward. I think I'm doing a better job now than I was a month ago or 2 months ago, and just keep moving forward, even if it's a baby step, a little tiny baby step at a time, and you will eventually get to where you're going. And so I want to say right now, just on this podcast, thank you, Patrick, for sending me that email and all of the emails I've gotten from you since. They are a big, important thing for me, and I just wanted you to know that. And that brings me to my final goal. The big goal is to finish my wall. Behind me on my wall in my office here, I have a piece of poster board, and I sat down the other night with a Sharpie and just wrote all of the projects I have that I want to finish this year and next year on the wall. And I wrote the ones that I have finished this year and crossed them out so I could show myself that I have this ability to complete work. And I'm just calling it my wall. And I've got dates on it and everything. It's my hard deadlines now. I've given myself hard deadlines for everything I do. And so goal number 5 for this year and my keep moving forward is to finish the wall. And I don't know if that means finish it by December or finish it by August of next year, but I plan to finish the wall in the next year. And maybe a little more. I've got some other projects that I'm really kind of excited about that really feel like I'm building who I am as an entertainer as well as a story creator. As I really feel like where I'm at and what I want to be doing as soon as I finish the space opera is going in the direction that I have chosen for myself as a writer. And I will talk about some of those things next week with the year 2 first episode for New Writer Podcast. I really want to thank you guys for listening to me for these last 30 episodes. I hope you'll be with me for the next 30 and the next 30 after that. Have a wonderful weekend. Good night. Thank you for listening to the New Writer Podcast. If you've enjoyed the show, please subscribe on YouTube and iTunes. We welcome reviews and appreciate your feedback. If you have questions or would like to be on the show, please email us, contact@newwriterpodcast.com. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you. Have a nice night.